Welcome to the Agree to Disagree podcast. I'm your host, Jason.
And I'm Robert.
And today we're going to take a little bit of a different direction. Last episode we talked about some of the recent happenings in the Des Moines metro area with the Des Moines School District superintendent being detained by ICE. And then since then there's been a whole hubbub. So if anyone's following that, it's been a madhouse. Today, we're going to be a bit more broad. So we're going to center on the fact that we are currently in the midst of a government shutdown. And we're not going to talk so much about the mechanics and the politics behind the shutdown itself, but more so the ideological differences and discrepancies between the left and the right that have sort of resulted in the government shutdown. And so, I don't know. We talking a little bit before we hit record, and a question came up that's just it's always a fun question to explore, and it seems to be one that social media really runs with, is why did you vote for Trump? Here we are, a government shutdown. We've got the division between the left and the right at a spot that's never been rivaled, at least in my observation through my 45 years. And all of this tension and turmoil and the fact that we are in the midst of a government shutdown seems to really be predicated on the notion that half this country is opposed to Donald Trump and the other half is highly supportive. Now, I think it's more nuanced than that. I think that there's a whole middle part of the spectrum that is much more nuanced. But for the sake of this discussion, it seems to make sense to just kind of look at it as, are you pro, are you anti? And we've had the man in office for long enough for there to be a significant track record. Between his first term and this term thus far, there's been a lot of material to kind of articulate this man's style, his beliefs, his politics, his diplomacy, his ability to be the president. And so I think it's probably a good source of conversation to kind of, unearth our ideological similarities and differences. Me being somebody who's more of a left-leaning center, I don't know what I am. And Robert, how would you describe yourself on the political spectrum?
I mean, when you boil it down to the base, I'll often tell my friends I vote Christian, and that would probably have me more in the conservative leaning. I have voted independent before. I've voted for the Libertarian Party. It was Gary Johnson.
Oh yeah,
I voted for him.
I have voted for him before,
and I felt like I threw away my vote. I know that's its own thing, right?
It is.
But if I'm being real, there's an element of voting against certain things, and I think most Christians feel like there is a lesser evil, and I don't want to dichotomize or I don't want to villainize anybody. It's not like that. It's just my core belief structure has me looking at party platforms and going, this one lines more with what I believe, and that those issues are more important to me. And I think people can kind of read through the lines on what those are, so I don't want to, I don't want to just bullet point those because they are such important issues, and I don't want to make people think that I don't love a certain people group, or I don't I think people are afraid to touch that, and also afraid to give each other the platform to really speak to why, so yeah. I lean conservative Christian. Of course I voted for Trump. When I voted for Trump, the illusion I feel at this point, and I know that's probably going to trigger some people, but the illusion that I was sold was that we were going to drain the swamp, and that people were going to get answers, and there was going to be accountability for, I mean, do I dare say the Epstein files? I mean, oh my gosh, there's so much misinformation about that, and now there's burying, and I can tell you, for me, when all of a sudden it was like they didn't exist, I was like, hold on, bro.
Yeah, it's that one moment where Trump's like, why are we still talking about the Epstein thing? Wait, this guy's dead. What are we even talking? This guy's nobody. It's
and
like,
for me,
wait a minute. What just
we
happened?
know as much as we can know anything anymore, with independent journalism being such a huge part of our news anymore, and where we get all of our information.
It's not a nothing burger. There's something there, and to see the president just all of a sudden change his entire perspective on it. Well, it's. I mean, what are you supposed to do? What's the American public supposed to do when they see that quick change in direction? It's like, well, what?
When I saw that shift, I was like, hold up, that's not right. And some people might find me ignorant for not coming to that sooner, but I just saw more wrong. I mean, the bare mathematics is that Democrats had the reins, if you will, 12 of the last 16 years, with Obama, and Trump had his 4, and then Biden had 4 after that. Mm-hmm. So at the very base, you had the fact that they've had it for 12 years. We've had it for 4. We, the colloquial, and again, I don't feel like either one of them really.
It's hard though, right? Not to claim a side.
Me.
You just did it.
No, I know.
It's just built in. It's built into our culture. At this point.
That's what we're peeling apart, right? That's where how we're cutting into this onion,
Well, and speaking of us, them, the two sides, I mean, how do you feel about Donald Trump's representation of the Christian, conservative, Republican values that you had previously sort of identified with? How do you feel as though he, as president, is representing that side?
Well, that's a good question. The knee-jerk, if you are a good, air quotes, good Christian, is that if somebody aligns himself with Christ, it's between him and Christ, So to say anything other than, he's on that path is above my pay grade, not to deflect. But I would say that...
He is a self-professed non-Christian, though, so he is not a Christian man.
What's that?
Donald Trump is not a Christian. He is... And I don't have the ability to pull up video, but he is...
Well,
he's not a Christian.
I think we were going in the same direction, is that his behavior and lack of diplomacy in some areas would imply that... maybe he needs to read his Bible a little bit more, and maybe he needs to be accountable in a men's group, of other wiser Christians that help. And again, I don't know his day to day. I don't know who he's involved with. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole. But if you're going to claim the name of Christ, and again, we'll not make that's its own soapbox. That's not what this is about. Mm-hmm. But if we're talking about who I am, why I voted that way, I voted against certain things that are just unacceptable in my ideology. Mm-hmm. And if you're gonna put your name with Christ, you need to act more Christian as you would, those of us who attach our name to him need to rep him well, because obviously everybody's watching, and I don't think he is a good representation in that way.
I would agree. I'm not a Christian. I'm agnostic, atheist. I'm a lot of things, but I don't subscribe to a higher power, certainly not Abrahamic God. So, my perspective is one as an observer outside looking in. And I would agree. I don't see him really embodying the message and the teachings of Christ. I think most of us ubiquitously can agree that Christ as a figure in the Bible is somebody that you probably could aspire to be and be a better person in doing so. And I think about that classic bumper sticker slogan, "What would Jesus do?" And I just see the way that Donald Trump is running the administration as a virtual antithesis to that. So I would imagine that there are a significant number of Christian folks out there that see that and kind of feel the same way, that this man is not living Christ, and it's not what we had in mind. There seems to be no compassion. I mean, recently cited, we all saw it, talking about his enemies and how he hates his enemies. I mean, he was so open to using that terminology. He doubled down, tripled down on it. I hate my enemies. I hate them. That is the antithesis of Christ. Hate is not something that lived in Jesus's heart, at least according to what I'm aware of the Bible. And I've done some studying. And I think most Christians would agree that having hate to a degree that you're able to triple down in front of God and country on global news is probably not the most Christian way to be. But on the other side of that is, how is this man representing the conservative, the Republican values? And that's what we were talking about before we hit record, is how, at least in my lifetime, I've seen the conservative, the Republican side of the political spectrum kind of morph and switch into this thing that was initially very pro-Constitution, limited government, a government that fears the people. That was a mantra. Our government should fear us. Second Amendment, right? And I've always subscribed to that. I believe, much like with police, they work for us. They serve us. And over time, I've seen the Republican Party go from that sort of ideology into one that all of a sudden seems to have a problem with a large number of groups in our country that they believe don't deserve the same rights as they do as Republicans. Whether it was in the 90s, the revolution of gay marriage through the Clinton administration, when we saw the Republicans very much dig their heels in and be in a stark opposition to that notion, that to me seems very unconstitutional. It seems very un-Republican to want to rob a segment of society of the ability to participate in the American dream the same way as the rest of us because of their, preference for the same gender. It was strange to me even as a young man, all the way up to fast forward to now, where we've got the leader of the Republican Party and of the free world, mind you, the president, Donald Trump, stifling the First Amendment very boldly on national global television, saying that he wants to pull the licensing from all media networks that criticize him. And it sounds dystopian, but it's legitimately what this man is saying. And what's most strange to me is, this is the man representing this constitutional, small, limited government party, and how he seems to be grandstanding as much more of an authoritarian that seems to believe the Constitution is a problem. And a lot of the rights within it are things that are malleable, things that he, as the executive of the country, should have the ability to just bypass. And we see that in his execution of policies. We see that in the rhetoric. We see that in his Twitter posts. He's very much somebody who does not believe in the core principles and values of the Constitution, which is the foundation of our nation. So I wonder, as somebody who is and has voted Republican, how do you feel as though Donald is representing the Republican Party?
Well, speaking to what you were just talking about, the attack on the First Amendment, regardless of which party you're from, censorship is a very, very dangerous road to go down. And our freedom of speech, which is protected by our right to own guns, it's I don't feel like he represents me. I was watching a news clip about what's going on in Portland right now, and how they sent the National Guard out there to protect. I believe
we were planning on going there for
the Department of Homeland Security.
We were excited to go. Now we're terrified, so we're not going. We're going to go next year.
Well, somebody burned a flag. An independent journalist grabbed the flag. There's turmoil there. But now, I don't know the truth of it. So I'll preface it that way. But Danielle, my wife, saw something that says a year in prison is being proposed for burning a flag. And I'm like,
The Supreme Court already ruled on that years ago. It is protected speech.
well, that's what I'm saying.
Isn't that crazy?
So to say, like, there's definitely some overstepping, and that is part of when prior to pressing record here, we were talking about the disillusionment or the disenchantment. I think it'd be the better way to phrase it. I am disenchanted with who I voted for, and it's because of actions that contradicted promises. And it's hard to sort through what is true, what is not anymore. As I stated on the last one, I've pulled away from social media, more for mental health than anything.
I don't blame you. It's a cesspool.
Oh gosh.
I'm addicted to it, but I'm aware that it's a cesspool.
Yeah. More insight on that at some point, but
Yeah.
I don't feel like I got what I paid for, if you would.
Yeah.
For sure. I've heard some of your shorts about the tariffs, and I'll be honest, I don't do the research to know how they've impacted us. I just, at face value, I trust my friends when they speak, and they do the research, and it's one of those things where I don't know if they had a good impact or not, you know? And when he started going down that path, some of it made sense, some of it didn't, you know?
Yeah.
But I think a good segue here is to say that so many decisions have been made rapid fire in just 2025.
Yeah. It almost just seems
That
it's impulse.
It's whack-a-mole for any of us to try and keep track of whether or not he's doing good or bad, you know, like, and I'm not saying that it's not trackable. It's just it's so, yeah, maybe that was good for us, but that definitely wasn't, you know, and that's good, you know, like you see some of that, and that's how I feel sometimes when I'm looking at it.
You definitely got to keep your head on a swivel. Like you said, it's like whack-a-mole. I mean,
Yeah.
it serves a really good distraction from some other things going on. You know, as an example, the Epstein files.
Right.
It's almost like his leadership and his executive orders are simply there as a diversion so that we stop asking him about the Epstein files.
Yeah. He's like, what craziness can we come up with now? And I don't think it's just him, though. And not to turn this into a conspiracy theory podcast, but that's another, I guess, staple of my side, if you will, is we are the Alex Jones crowd. The
water's turning the frickin' frogs gay side.
To some extent, you know, we get lumped in there, and man, I just want the truth. I just want to know what's actually going on, and I find it so frustrating that we can't trust the people that we're putting in power.
I agree.
If you speak to the representation of the Republican Party, I guess a smaller government, it doesn't feel very small because we don't even know where it stops and starts anymore. We don't know who's pulling the strings. You think it's Donald Trump, but
Well, my thoughts are I expect politicians, especially, and Donald Trump wasn't a politician, but I expect those that are elected to positions such as president, I expect them to be extremely intelligent and able to make their perspective known through their actions. They typically are strong personalities and they know how to use resources, and there's a reason why they're elected. Whether it's just because they've got the wealth and the resource and the backing from others or because they actually run on a message that resonates with people. Nonetheless, they know how to inspire. They know how to move people. And I don't know. When I see this man executing his role, saying that he's Republican, conservative, never saying he's a Christian, because he is not a Christian person. Just by de facto, he is not. He's not somebody who is a man of faith. And he's, throughout the course of his life, said that many times on camera. But the fact that he's able to tap into that, I guess what I'm trying to say is none of this is a surprise to me. The bait and switch, the doing things differently than you promised, those are table stakes for the president. Now, it's to varying degrees. It's on the spectrum. And I'll be quite frank, I've never seen a president flip this much. The country he is trying to forge is a complete opposite negative image of the one that he promised to those that voted to him, that he promised to the entire nation. But what's more concerning than this politician, this political figure flipping like this, is those that voted for him and have yet to come to terms with the fact that they're disappointed and that this is going in a different direction. The cognitive dissonance that's being employed by so many Americans to justify the behavior of this man and his administration, how people are willing to, through cognitive dissonance, paint a picture in their mind. This is still within the bounds of their moral scruples and principles, the mental gymnastics that goes into justifying the way this man is treating other human beings and speaking about Americans and speaking about his own voters and speaking about just the country and the world at large. To see so many people, so many Americans busting their ass to try to make sense of that in their head, and while doing so, the things that come out of their mouths it's astonishing to me. And I'm seeing smart people that I've respected my entire life saying things that I have to assume they actually believe, that are in such stark opposition to the principled values that I understood of them prior to now. It blows my mind. So that's what's more concerning to me. I expect shitty behavior from our leaders. I don't expect Americans to allow this kind of thing and manipulate it within their own mind to where they can still continue being outspoken in favor and support of this man. And the cheering that I see for the things that he's doing and how that's so in opposition to the values that the Republicans, the Constitution itself, the Christian community, it's just in such opposition to those ideals. It blows my mind to see Americans busting their ass and spending so many calories to try to find excuses to rationalize this man. Are you seeing the same thing? Does it kind of feel the same way to you?
Yeah, and the weaponization of ideologies is definitely more prevalent now than I ever remember it being. Yeah, I agree. It's one of those things where the moment you say you agree with this or you disagree with that, you are branded like you're a traitor to some movement that you didn't even know that you like you didn't know it was there. I didn't know we were there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't know that this was that serious. I didn't know we couldn't even talk about it, and I think in the realm of getting back to what we started with last week and, obviously the immigration situation and, ICE detaining our superintendent here in Des Moines. I think that if somebody like Trump really wants to save face and do right by the American people, not right by the Republicans, not right by the Democrats, but to bridge this gap, the government shutdown is one thing, but as you said earlier, people are scared. And, we can figure out who's paying for what after we figure out how we're going to bridge this gap in getting people that we care about out of harm's way. Mm-hmm. And it's that simple. If there's, and I say if, because again, I'm not well versed on it. I trust you. If these methodologies for ICE detainments and things like that are excessive, then we need to stop. We need to just reevaluate, because if people are getting hurt and if people are getting, if people's lives are getting ruined for the sake of political numbers, man, it shouldn't be that way. No. I'd say finding a solution, and obviously this is all rainbows and butterflies, right? We want this ideal solution, and I think about like gun control and drug control, and we're like, hey, if we could just make them illegal, or if we just told people to come forward. The same is true with immigration. People are scared to come forward because they don't know what's going to happen.
Well, there's not a clear path to citizenship. Yeah. So it's just a stalemate. And now
that's one side is saying they're here illegally, but very coldly. They're saying it very like
doesn't feel Christian.
You're a criminal,
right?
And like while that is true to some extent,
it doesn't negate their humanity,
right?
And it doesn't change the fact that we're America, and we're supposed to lead this world by example. I mean, whether we like it or not, that's the role that we decided to take on after World War II. And this is not. I mean, all we got to do is listen to the rest of the world to know that we're not necessarily on the right side of this thing, at least by the greater sense of morality at a global scale. We're not adhering to that.
As a native Texan, I'm familiar with the signs at hardware stores and Mexican restaurants that enlist the help of these people. And I think we know which people we're talking about, the illegal immigrants. They're mostly written in Spanish, and they say, come get 2 weeks worth of work and you're going to get paid, and it's implied that it's all under the table, right? We all know what's going on. Mm. And I liken it to, because this has been going on for years, right? And this is why this is such a problem. We have allowed people in because it was the easy way to do it. And it like nobody, I know I don't want to go work in a field. I know I don't want to do some of the jobs that they're willing to do and not even have the benefits that I would get for doing them. So that being said, a good analogy that I make in my head, and this is going to be a very base, but we all drive, most of us drive, I should say. And, it's widely known that speed limit is more of a recommendation, right? You know what I mean? And follow me on this, because this is kind of a, it might be a bit of a stretch for some people, but
I feel you. Even in traffic school, they tell you, go with the flow of traffic.
Speed limit, if it's set at 65, most of us know I can go 5 over and I can get away with that, right? Yeah. And that's the colloquial belief. If I go 5 over, I'm good to go. Some of us might go 7 over or 8 over, and we're still good to go. Mm-hmm. But if the police started locking that down and saying, it says 65 and you were going 66, what an uproar, right?
Well, I think we see that as microcosms and speed traps. And here, and even in Grimes, I see a surge of police presence, like once or twice a year. All of a sudden there's a bunch more cops in town, and they're pulling people over that are going 27 and a 25. And it creates a lot of hubbub on the Facebook groups. It pisses off a lot of us, pisses me off. I see that. What we've done here is just all of a sudden started enforcing something that was generally known as just kind of a thing that we allow in this country. And to your point, that we exploit and take advantage of through labor. And then all of a sudden, now we are pulling the cord on that, and it's abrupt. And when it's that abrupt, it requires there to be some violence and some tactics. And I think it's safe to say that because we're just now enforcing it to a degree in which it's, a daily occurrence on the news, and it's we're through social media and through just network television, we're seeing how it's devastating so many human beings that are in our country, illegal or otherwise. And I think we can all agree that, and I'll just say it, that Gestapo-style tactic is not the American way. And so there's a better way to do it. And what I'd love to see from both sides, and the left side, I'd love to see you stand up and say a bit more about what the alternative is. Now, I want to be very clear in my position on this. I don't believe that any of these tactics that are being used to get people out of our country that are here illegally or otherwise, depending on whatever their status is. I mean, we all know of people that aren't illegally here that are also being deported, but that's anecdotal right now because I don't have a way to pull up any facts on that. But there's a better way, and I would love for the left to put some energy into proposing how do we get this immigration train back on track. And I think the answer is through immigration reform. There needs to be a clearer, more attainable, fair, and equitable path to citizenship here. And we've all been complaining about that for years. But when's the last time you heard that being discussed during this turmoil? Now, I'm smart enough to know with what we're seeing and how the tactics are being employed to remove them from our country, there's not a lot of room to talk about a lot of change right now because we have to stop the way this is happening. And it's happening in a way that's against the Constitution. The Supreme Court's having to intervene, close down detention centers, but the executive branch is so far ahead because they're not doing it the right way that the catch-up process has kind of ensured that we're in a perpetual situation where all we can talk about is the tactics when we need to be talking about reform. And I would love to see both sides come to understanding of that so that we can start that conversation because it's it's decades overdue.
Well, and there's the whack-a-mole element I was mentioning earlier. Before we can even address one glaring issue, another one pops up. And that in and of itself needs to be handled with care, whether that looks like an amnesty period where people could step forward, some grace, to use some Christian terminology there. There definitely needs to be some grace, because we were okay with a good amount of these people being here prior to, recently.
Yeah. Some of the greatest economic times of my life have been during times in which these illegal immigrants, whatever we want to call this segment of society, were here and functioning and operating. I want to be clear, I'm not an advocate of illegal entry into our country, but it's more nuanced than that. Our greatest economic periods were with these people in our communities as a part of our society. And then overnight, we've become this.
Well, I mean, I know we can only go off of, some, like, I guess I should say I can only go off of some of the fictional representation of this that I've seen. But rich farmers that have taken advantage of this to have their crops harvested and cared for on the cheap. But beyond that,
while getting government subsidies.
And rich oil tycoons that have allowed illegal labor on their rigs
while getting massive tax breaks.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain. I mean, I guess I'd be willing to wager that these men and women are more conservative because they want all of those tax breaks and all of the care given to them by the Republicans. But then they, at the same time, are now turning on that whole culture that they themselves have facilitated.
So like it's part of fostering this aspect of American culture, for sure.
So we need to, going back to what I said last week, roundtable. It needs to be a discussion. Next time somebody says something that triggers you, polarizes you, if you will, maybe, just ask, what do you mean? Let's go a little farther.
Yeah, try not to raise your voice.
Especially if it pisses you off. I would say that's fair. Especially if it pisses you off. The moment that you feel enraged, maybe you go, I love this person. Or at least I like them enough that we're having a private conversation. Maybe potentially they have a point somewhere in what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
Let's have a conversation. And that's what the element of this podcast is about.
Agreed.
Let's have a conversation.
Let's get curious. That's a massive part of the American experience from my perspective, is being curious, exploring other perspectives. That way you've got the information that you need to come to a compromise, which is really what our country is supposed to be founded on. This country is for all of us. It is not for the right. It is not for the left. It is not for anyone other than all of us at large. And the only way that functions is through civil dialogue, civil discourse. I'm not an idiot. There's going to be times in which it's much more turbulent than that. But we're not going to get anywhere at each other's throats. And I hate to be a they guy, a conspiracy guy, but whoever they are, they want us in this position. They want us in this state where we are at each other's throats, looking at news that is disgusting and just rage baiting and has us at each other's throats at all times. And it's distracting us. It's distracting us from the real cause here and the real root of the problems, which is people in positions of power that are not in the position of power for the right reasons. And that is un-American. So we'll wrap with this. As a man who did not and has never and will never vote for Donald Trump, I don't have a big dog in this fight. But what I'll ask you is, now that we're this far into his second term, what is your final thought on the vote that you cast?
I hope the next 3 years are a lot better than the first one. That's my from the hip response. I'd like to see some humility. I'd like to see some reaching across the aisle and doing exactly what we're doing. I'd like to see some willingness to be the bigger man and, for lack of a better way of saying that, to just reach out and go, what can we do to find some kind of collaboration, some kind of middle ground here? Because if we keep heading in the direction that we're going, it's not sustainable. Agreed. It's not. And we need to de-escalate. We need to. That was my whole reason for even wanting to do this podcast. We need to de-escalate, and that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see him live up to some of the, like, if God did save him, because I know that that's something that has been thrown around. If God did save him to run this country, then he needs to act like it.
Well, what I hear you describing, just from my perspective, is leadership and compassion. And that's very little to demand of the President of the United States of America. So I would absolutely agree. If we can see that from him, maybe the next 3 years won't be such a shit show. So I'm right there with you. This has been another episode of Agree to Disagree and Still Be Friends with your hosts, Jason Arnett
and Robert Blake. And I'd say success. We're still friends.
Yeah, we are still friends. And we'll look forward to a conversation next week. Appreciate you all for listening. And if you don't subscribe already, please do so. We'd love to have you click the bell notification so that when new episodes pop up, you're notified. And most importantly, we would love to see some engagement in the comments. So if you got a problem with anything that I've said or anything that's Robert said, let's talk about it. If you're in support of anything, or if you have an additional perspective or ideals, please go ahead and comment. We love to talk about it, and we love mining for new material from that comment section. So thank you all very much, and we will see you next time.
Bye.